him. How will he find us when he comes?
Awake and ready.
And when he asks us to dedicate our lives ever more perfectly to him, how will he find us?
Awake and ready.
Heavenly Father.
Heavenly Father.
Divine Mother.
Divine Mother.
Friend, beloved God.
Friend, beloved God.
Great Master.
Great Master.
Jesus Christ.
Jesus Christ.
Babaji Krishna.
Babaji Krishna.
Lahiri Mahashaya.
Lahiri Mahashaya.
Swami Shri Yukteswar.
Swami Shri Yukteswar.
Beloved Guru.
Beloved Guru.
Paramahansa Yogananda.
Paramahansa Yogananda.
Saints of all religions.
Saints of all religions.
We humbly bow to you all.
We humbly bow to you all.
Guide us.
Guide us.
Through all littleness.
Through all littleness.
Through all ego attachments.
Through all ego attachments.
Free us from our karma.
Free us from our karma.
In this lifetime.
In this lifetime.
That we may find our home in thee.
That we may find our home in thee.
Eternally.
Eternally.
Om.
Om.
Peace.
Peace.
Amen.
Amen.
Please have a seat. We'll start with
Through many lives I've drunk the cup of laughter. No man could tell the pleasures I have known. The stars in the endless sky, if one could count, would come to billions. Yet as vast as are their numbers, so many years I've wandered far from you. Through many lives I've drunk the cup of sorrow. No man could tell the bitter tears I've shed. The drops in the endless sea, if one could count, would come to billions. Yet as vast as are their numbers, so many years I've wandered far from you. Through countless lives I've sought your cup of sweetness, found other cups, yet thirsted evermore. The streams in the hills of time all found their way into a desert. Every noon of high fulfillment, and many hours did sing to evening gloom. I long for you in summer and in winter, only for you my heart thirsts day and night. I've learned that the sweetest song ears ever heard were but your echo. fill me completely, for nevermore I'd wander far from you.
Good morning again, friends.
Good morning.
Oh, God bless you, George. Great to see you. I am Narayan, and this is my wife, Dharmadevi. It's a great joy to share Sunday service with you. And every week can we open the doors to get a little cross ventilation? People are hot. Every week we share from this book, Raising the One Light, and there are parallels between the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita, sort of the Bible of the East, Bible of the West. And last night, you might notice we had a Kriya initiation, so we have the altar beautifully decorated. And actually, this reading is very much in tune with the topic of Kriya Yoga. This is Reincarnation, the Spiral Staircase. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your depthless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. In the book of Revelation, chapter 3, Jesus Christ tells us, "Him that overcometh will I make a pillar in the temple of my God, and he shall go no more out." There is a difference between church dogmas, which are based on reasoned deductions from scriptural statements, and pronouncements of wisdom, which are based on the inner realization of scriptural truths. Reason, like a train, can only follow already existing tracks of human experience. Human memory, being short, is seldom able to cross back over the threshold of a person's present existence. Biblical references to previous lifetimes on earth are overlooked in the deductive process, and we find them therefore excluded from the body of official dogma. Nevertheless, such references exist. The Bible itself presents them, as does Jesus in this passage, not as abstract teaching, but as direct, personal perception of truth. In the same way, Krishna, in the Bhagavad Gita, silences Arjuna's reasonable doubts on the subject, not by reasoned argument, but by the frank statement contained in the 4th chapter of that great scripture. "Arjuna, you and I have passed through many births. I know all of them, though you, O chastiser of foes, recall them not." Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind.
So I want to welcome you again, and welcome especially those who are visiting us from other places. So nice to have you with us. I'm going to start by reading from Whispers from Eternity. These are Yogananda's prayer poems. And this is, "I will hop from eternity to eternity. My gold gossamer astral body, shining with the spark of immortality, hopped cricket-like from one blade of existence to another. Thou hast clothed the barren soil of eternity with grass blades of my cycles of time. I will hop to them one by one, from one blade of pleasure to another, until I can leap to the safety of thy reassuring hands. With the living threads of thy joy I was formed. I am happy to have danced my part in this cosmic show, but I have done now with restless hopping. I would find rest at last in cosmic changelessness. human lives again, like slowly moving camels, plod ponderously over broad, sandy deserts toward the oasis of self-awareness. As developed beings, their astral bodies pass also from planet to planet. Only in thee at last do they find what they were seeking always. Lord, give me again the perfection of fulfillment in thy love of infinity. So as Narayan mentioned, we had a beautiful Kriya ceremony last night, and Kriya is really a great symbol for reincarnation. You can think, and especially those who took Kriya for the first time last night, can think of Kriya as a new incarnation, that your life now actually kind of starts with discipleship. It's a new incarnation, and I'm sure whether you've taken Kriya or not, you can probably look back on your life and feel like that was incarnations ago, that what a totally different life I used to have. And Kriya just accelerates that change toward perfection. So we can, hopefully we look back on our life and go, we look how much I've changed for the better. But if not, meditation will help with that. But then with Kriya, it's just like that. Yogananda said that one Kriya practiced properly equals a year of right spiritual living. So you can imagine if we're doing 108 Kriyas, maybe even twice a day, that's a lot of years that we're blasting through of that right living. And so Kriya Yoga, airplane route to God. What I wanted to focus on for this reading, this topic of reincarnation, is it really worth it? And I'll tell you what I mean. When we imagine, if you will, a couple, right? Maybe they've been married 5-10 years, young couple, and they get in a little argument about some seemingly unimportant thing. But at the time, it seems and feels very important. And so they go to sleep and they're angry at each other, not speaking to each other. And they wake up and, you know, as we sometimes do, wake up and just feel like, oh, it's a new beginning. It's a fresh start. And then they see each other and they go, wait, I was mad at you. I know, maybe, oh yeah, I remember what it was. And so it starts again. And this goes on for years. And years go by and they still look at each other and, can't believe you did that. And now though, they try to look back on what it was, and they have absolutely no idea what started it. But it's this cycle, right, of reincarnation. Now, you could say, oh, well, they just could have made up, and someone could have dug down a little deep and said, I'm sorry, and the other one could have gone, well, I'm sorry too. And they could have started fresh. But this is what happens with reincarnation. We don't remember our past lives, but have you ever met someone that you came together and you felt, oh my God, it's that person. or, oh, it's that person. I recognize that person. How do I recognize that person? Actually, I have a kind of funny story about that. When I first moved to Santa Monica, I was not used to seeing famous people. And I was, however, used to, I had just gone from my home in Georgia to India, to my first experience of Ananda. where I met hundreds of people from Ananda for the very first time. And it was overwhelming because I was seeing people and I'm going, God, that person looks so familiar. That person looks so familiar. And maybe this had happened to me like twice in my whole life up until that point. But then it was just like hundreds of people. I'm like, why do all these people look so familiar? This is so weird. And, you know, so I mentioned it to a few people and they said, oh, that's probably because we've had past lives together. And I said, oh, that's cool, you know? This is a new concept for me. And so then fast forward a little ways and I moved to Santa Monica. And I was answering the phone and doing reception and things, and so I remembered getting this call from someone who was signing up for, I believe it was our first Learn to Meditate class for Ananda LA. And I noticed that when I asked for his name and his information, and he said, Billy Boyd. And I said, well, that's interesting that someone's, you know, usually you ask, what's your name? And Billy. Okay, and what's your last name? Boyd. But it was Billy Boyd. And I went, oh, that's interesting. I just remember it, put a little ding in my head. And so then we had the class, and people were coming in, I'm signing them in, and he came in, I'm Billy Boyd. I said, oh yeah, I spoke to you on the phone. I said, you look so familiar. And I said, and he said, oh yeah. And I said, maybe it was a past life. And he said, or it might have been that I was in Lord of the Rings. And I was like, that's it. That's what it was. But he was a really good sport about it. He said, it could have been past lives too, who knows? But it was funny. So back to this topic though, of is it worth it? You know, so many times Yogananda cautioned so strongly against oversensitivity. And we can all, it's interesting because this strong caution against oversensitivity, and yet when we come onto the path, we start meditating, what happens? We get more sensitive. We get more sensitive to energy, to other people's energy, and then we think automatically we become psychic, and we know exactly what every person is thinking behind every maybe facial expression they have. Oh, she must be mad at me. I feel all that negative energy coming from her. Well, maybe she just had a bad day. You know? But you know, what it is that we take things personally. We become more aware of our energy, of our egos also, and we become more aware when something's hurting our egos. How we could differentiate it in a way that would be really helpful is to go, I like it when my ego gets hurt. I like it when somebody steps on my ego because it's helping me to, what's our whole goal? To transcend the ego. Bless you. If we don't transcend the ego, we have to reincarnate. We have to go back to middle school. Does anyone remember middle school? We lived with Barbie and her two teenage girls who are now in high school. But God, when they were going through middle school, I was like, oh, I remember middle school. I don't want to do that again. But you know, the anguishing monotony of lives, many lives, it gets us to that point where we don't want to do it anymore. We say, Divine Mother, free me. And it can be selfish to start with. Whenever I met Swami Kriyananda, and he was much later on in his years, he was saying, I'm not coming back. I want to be free. If Master wants me to come back, I'll come back. But he was like very much in the, when I'm done, I'm done. And I remember I wrote him a letter before I met him, and I said, I just want to thank you so much for all your books and all of these amazing works and for bringing Master to life for me. And he sent me an email response, and I said, sir, I would love to Oh, it was in the letter. I said, I'd love to meet you, whether it's in this life or the next. Now, I meant in like the astral world or somewhere. And he said in his response, you better make it this life because I'm not coming back. So I did. I jumped on a plane and I went to meet him. I want to read to you from Yogananda's original Percepta lessons. It's a hefty book. But if you'd like to, you can close your eyes as I read this. We reap what we sow. Hence, all the visitations of ills are not due to our parents of this life or to grandparents, but are due to our sins in this life or past lives. We are never sinful enough to deserve eternal Hades. Sin is a graft, a parasite. Essentially, we are perfect souls. Hence, to work out sins, souls must come to earth after they work out their error-yielding sins. They become free to become one with God again. Souls who reach perfection never need to come back to earth again. I want to pause there for a moment and share with you a story of, actually they just compiled a book of Yogananda's sayings in this, The Man That Refused Heaven. And it's a beautiful story of a saint who was so high in his spiritual attainment, he was tested. This angel came and tested him, and he gave him of all of his food, and he tested it, like threw it on the floor, and the saint went and made him another meal and gave it to him. He threw it on the floor like 3 or 4 times and the saint just was even-minded and cheerful and just, oh, here you go. Here you go. And so the angel finally said, I was testing you. You've passed all of my tests. I'm here to personally escort you to heaven. And, you know, I imagine the angel is just like waiting to get the, wow, thank you. I'm so excited. But no, the saint said, okay, well, let me think about it for a moment. And the angel's kind of like, well, that's an interesting response that I haven't gotten. But he says, because I've lived here on earth long enough to know that usually when there's a plus, there's a minus, that things balance out. So does he ask what the pros are?
What are the advantages?
What are the advantages to this heaven place? And the angel's like, you mean, what are the advantages? It's like eternally sunny and glorious, and you can manifest the most divine fruit at any moment right in your hands, and there's beautiful music and beautiful scenery, and you can teleport anywhere you want to go in an instant, and all your loved ones are there greeting you, and angels showering rose petals on you. I said, okay, well, that all sounds really nice. So what are the disadvantages to heaven? Again, the angel's just like, really? Like, I just told you all that. And you just but he said, well, since you asked, I do have to tell you that, that basically you'll be there for as long as your good karma lasts, and then you'll have to come back to earth.
And you can't make spiritual progress.
And you can't make spiritual progress in this heaven. And he said, well, the disadvantages colossally outweigh the advantages. I'll stay here. He said, isn't there something better than this? And he said, well, yeah. The angel says, there is something higher than this astral heaven, and once you achieve complete freedom, then you're united with the divine at all times. And I said, okay, thanks so much. See you later. I'll stay here and work out the last of my karma. But it's an interesting story, but I won't go into it anymore. I want to bring it back, though, to this topic of, is it worth it? Because I think it's so important in the world that we live in. it's so easy to justify ourselves, to justify our little selves and say, well, she shouldn't have treated me that way, or, you know, he should have known better, whatever it might be. And we allow ourselves to stay in anger or fear or whatever negative emotion it is. We allow a little bit or a lot of meanness to creep into our hearts. And what that does is it brings a little bit of closure into our hearts. It shuts out the light just a little bit. And then that little bit of less light then lets us see the next situation with a little less clarity, a little less light. And then we go, huh, well, that person's acting even worse than the other person. No way I'm not gonna accept any fault in this. There's no way it's my fault. Well, let me ask you this. If you could see the grand scheme of things, the whole big picture, and you could see that if you had just said, I'm sorry, even if you weren't at fault, and you could see that little, I'm sorry, let's be friends again, allowed an entire relationship to just be at peace. And that cycle of karma and reincarnation could be finished, could be closed, and that then you might be free in that lifetime. Wouldn't you do whatever the heck it took to clear the air? So sometimes, though, we can't clear the air. Maybe someone that we've had a difficult time has passed on or is not open to working things out. But the thing that we can do, the only thing that we can do, is to clear our side of the street, clear our hearts of any negativity and any fear, any doubts, any discouragement. If we can keep our hearts open and clear, then other people can as well. Other people will as well. It's like Yogananda said, to teach people through your example is great, but then more subtly, as we practice what we're preaching, a friend of mine just recently, she has a friend who is going through a really difficult time health-wise, and this friend said, well, she's just choosing to take drugs, which is not getting to the root of her problem, and so this is just going to continue. Now, I happen to remember this friend doing the exact same thing, and I thought, isn't that interesting? It's so easy to see it when someone else is doing it, but we don't realize that we're doing these things as well, and that every person that we come in contact with, especially that rubs us the wrong way, is a reflection of something wrong in ourselves. Beautiful thing that Yogananda said was, it takes goodness even to see goodness in others. So when you see someone and you go, you're so beautiful, there's such light in you, I feel the joy coming from you. It's a reflection of the light and joy and love of your soul. And then it goes the other way as well. When we see negativity, when we see judgment, we see criticism, just instantly, I've been trying this, it's hard, but it works. As soon as you have a judgment about someone, turn it inside and go, that's me. I'm judgmental. I'm critical. And it doesn't feel good. So then the ego's natural response is, I don't like the way that feels. I'm going to stop doing that. That's a painful action. I'm going to stop doing it. But it's a freeing ego action, because then, and do it for as long as it takes. Because if you just go, oh yeah, I'm sure that's a reflection of me. God, but that person is such a then if your mind goes back to that, turn it around again and keep doing it until the ego says, all right, she means business, he means business, let's cut that out. So I want to close then with this last part of Master's passage here. All effects or seeds of our past actions, karma, can be destroyed by roasting them in the fire of meditation, concentration, the light of superconsciousness, and right actions, free from desire for the fruit of action. God bless you.
With every breath.